for blogs on the internet, whatsupwiththat.com. Can you please welcome Anthony Watts?
Thank you. Well, give a little bit of time for folks to get back in here. I'm going to spend a moment or two introducing myself and what I'm about. Talk about my surface stations project and what I've learned in the past few years doing blogging, which has been an interesting experience all by itself. This is a bit about me. I've been on the air, television weather person for 25 years, 8 years in radio weather. I operate a company that provides weather services and instrumentation. Weather instrumentation is really my specialty. And I operate the most visited climate website in the world with 46.3 million visits as of just a few days ago, and rated #1 by Wikio. You know, a few years ago, if someone would tell me that I'd be here addressing you all and that I would be able to say what I just said, I'd say they were crazy. It's really taking me by surprise. About me, I'm a bit of a green person. I have solar power on my home, and that's a 10 kilowatt system, and it drives the electrical power meter backwards. I drive an electric car. This is my first one, and now I'm on my second one, which plugs into a standard electrical outlet and charges overnight. I drive it to and from work, around town for errands. Cost me about 5 cents per mile on a drive. Quite fun and economical. And I do it because I like the technology and because it saves money. I put timer switches in my home so that when we're turning on lights, like outside lights and so forth, they don't accidentally stay on overnight. So I like to save energy. Being energy efficient is a good thing, I think. Nothing wrong with that. I put LED lights in my home recently because the lights that I had in my hallway were sucking about a kilowatt. Now I'm down to about 1/5 of that, thanks to the LED lights. And believe it or not, most people don't know this, I used to be a climate activist. Back in 1988, I was moved by Dr. Jim Hansen when he made an address to Congress talking about CO2 and his models and what we needed to do. And at that time, as a TV weather person, I said, you know, I really have to do something. I represent science to the public. I felt like I had to do something to move that idea along. First thing I did was I got involved with a local issue in my town. I tried to save a couple of trees that were legacy trees. We succeeded in doing that. And I got involved with the National Arbor Day Foundation in the United States, in Lincoln, Nebraska. I went to them with an idea. I had it in my shower one day, and I thought, you know, TV meteorologists really should be helping to solve this problem. So I said, let's put together a program where we can beam it by satellite to the TV stations, and they can run a program about the advantages of planting trees to help mitigate CO2. And this was all my response to Jim Hansen in his speech. In 1990, we planted almost 250,000 seedlings in the United States on Earth Day, about that time, as a result of that project. So what changed my thinking? I met someone. His name was Jim Goodrich, the state climatologist of California. He retired in my town. He had all the temperature records for the entire state, all the way back in 1850. He started doing his own independent study of temperature records, and he found some interesting things. He noticed that while cities like Los Angeles had very steep temperature trends, other cities did not. And he plotted different cities on a map, and as you can see here, there are cities that are blue, which indicate cooling trend, and there are cities that are red. This is San Francisco, and then there's down along Los Angeles and San Diego, all in the red with lots of urbanization. There's also lots of blue. But he found that CO2-induced heating didn't seem to be very homogeneous throughout California. And he started plotting it by population. He showed me this graph. And on this graph, it shows here counties with greater than 1 million population have a very steep temperature trend. Counties with between 100,000 and 1 million population have a not so steep trend, and then counties with less than 100,000 population have essentially a flat trend. And when he showed me that graph, that's when the light bulb went on for me. Because I said, well, wait a minute, if CO2 is heating the atmosphere homogeneously everywhere the same way, how could it choose counties based on population? It just wasn't possible. It had to be something with population going on there. That's when I started really to question the whole concept of CO2-induced heating globally. So Jim and I brainstormed on some ideas. We thought about poorly sited stations. He thought it might be more widespread. I suggested something about paint. In 1979, there was a change in specification on paint on the weather boxes, the Stevenson screens. That might also be a factor. That was in 1996. And at that time, neither of us had any time or funding to pursue either of these ideas. Years passed. We both did separate things. Jim continued his studies. I left TV and pursued a public service career on a local school board. In 2006, I was not re-elected as part of the great purge of conservatives in the United States that year. And having free time all of a sudden, first time in years, I started a blog. In March of 2007, this is the blog entry from my old blog, which got moved to the new one. This is the old style. This is what I started with. Started talking about temperature and the measurement of temperature with another local blogger who was an engineer. Got me thinking about temperature. And I decided that I would try the paint experiment I talked about with Jim Goodrich so long ago. So I bought 3 Stevenson screens and decided to set it up. The original U.S. Weather Bureau specification was for whitewash. In 1890, when the U.S. Weather Bureau was put together by an act of Congress, they designed the Stevenson screen. The paint that they had available to them back then was from Tom Sawyer era whitewash, which was basically lime and water. Very thin, you had to put multiple coats on. And I remember in college, as part of my training, I was working with the meteorology department in their instrumentation section. I had to assemble a Stevenson screen as one of my jobs, and the whitewash was coming off in my hand, and I went to my professor and said, what is this? I mean, this is awful. This stuff's coming off in my hand, and I mean, you really want this out there in the field? He said, no, don't change it, don't touch it, that's whitewash, that's the specification. I wanted to change it to something better, he wouldn't let me do it. I remembered that. But in 1979, the Weather Bureau changed their specification to latex paint, which was more commonly available. And here's the theory. Cured whitewash, which is calcium carbonate, might have a different optical property than latex, which is titanium dioxide. So with that change in paint, did we get a change in temperature inside the screen? I decided to find out. First thing I did was I painted some wooden slats and put temperature probes in it and ran some plots just to see if I could see a difference that way. And indeed, I could. And it was fairly significant. You see here the differences that I saw in the different kinds of woods and paint. So that said to me, well, maybe I should move it up a bit. And here's the results on a more magnified scale. So I bought 3 Stevenson screens, brand new, set up a bare wood one for the control, the latex, and the whitewash. I had to recreate the historical chemical formula for whitewash that might have been used back in the 1890 to 1930s era. I called up the National Lime Company and they helped me formulate the whitewash coverage. I ran a test. I had a data loggers were going to each one of these screens. Each one of these had a NISD calibrated thermometer in it, and then I have a separate thermometer here which had air being drawn through it by a fan as a reference thermometer outside of it. Basically, I bought all this equipment, put about $5,000 of my own money into this project just because I was curious. And what I found was, yes, paint makes a difference. This is what the raw data looks like, and this is what it looks like when you smooth it out, so you get all the daily noise and the hourly noise out of it. And you can see that the air temperature run by the aspirated unit away from the screen was lower than the other screens where we had whitewash, latex, and bare wood. They had differences. And when you magnify that and look at the T-max, this is a typical day, the reference that had the air blowing through it was cooler. And then we have the whitewash, which was second coolest, the latex, which was third coolest, and then the control, the bare wood, was warmest. When you look at the T-min, it was reversed. So that told me that paint made a difference, and gee, that might have leaked into the temperature records. And both the Tmax and Tmin are affected, and of course, since we average those to get our global mean temperature, that means the global mean would be affected from all these stations.